Alright, so another day in paradise here, and yay, we have a windshield. Nice, now it's almost like a car. Okay, so today we have some other little projects I'm gonna tell you as we're going, but first of all I wanted to sort out the door hardware, the door handles and the locks and everything. So I have them spread on the table over there, and obviously we have here parts for more than one car, because we got some additional doors from different places, and we changed the doors actually, so some of the doors came with hardware, some didn't. So anyways, I want to sort out what we're gonna use and what we're not gonna use, and the most important part is the locks, because we have many locks now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I have to find out which ones are the ones that we're gonna use. And we have 2 sets of keys. I don't know, this one is the one that I was using so far to start the car, but I want to see if this set of keys here is same as the other one, so we can have spares. So let's start with that. Alright, so these two are identical. At least they do the same job. So this means the other two need to be identical too, but let's see what do they do. Okay, we only have one lock for the trunk, so let's see. Yes, so this one works here, the little one works here. Good. And these have different shape though. No. Yes. So this is solved. So let's see now, out of these barrels, which one is the right one. No. Somebody invented a hose clamp to hold this one in place. Oh, this one works here. So only have one door lock. That's not good. Oh, maybe on the door. Oh, here we have a lock on the old door. Hey, it works! So it turned out that the second barrel was on the original door of the car, which is not in use anymore, so I pulled it out. And it was held by a piece of hose and a hose clamp again, like the other one. Somebody found this clever method to keep them on the door. And the original little clamp was missing from the barrel, but like I said, we have 3 more, I don't know how many more. So I took the clamps from the barrels that we don't have keys for and put them on the ones that we were gonna use. From the other hardware, I took the best 2 of each and put them in a bin, so I don't mix them up anymore. And then it was time to start installing things. I started with the boot lid, and first I changed the threads, because after the paint there was primer inside, paint and everything, so it was good to be chased. And then I realized that I have to clean up and paint the actual lock. So I did that and let the paint dry, and in the meantime I went ahead to install the door handles. But then I realized that there was another problem here. I forgot to order the little gaskets that go under the door handles, so I had to make my own, and that wasn't very hard because I just stuck a piece of masking tape on top of a piece of inner tube. That's actually an inner tube from my Spitfire from when I bought it. I saved the inner tubes and I am using them now for gaskets and stuff like that. So I just traced it and cut it, and my little gaskets turned out not too bad. I used the hole puncher to punch holes for the screws in the small triangular gasket and in the bigger rectangular one, and then it was time to install them on the car. And then I could install the barrel for the locking mechanism, and you can see here where the lever of the locking mechanism needs to fit inside the slots of the little tab on the barrel. And then I could just push hard on the barrel and make sure that the two little ears of the clamp click in place, and that was it. Not too bad. Yeah? One second, Master.
It's okay, just turn over.
Meanwhile, the paint of the rear lock was dry, so I could mount it in place and test it, and everything went well there too. Then I did a little bit more wiring, and I didn't film it because I know it was too boring already after so many episodes of wiring. But here, if you notice, when I open the doors, the illumination light for the ignition switch and the passenger footwell are working, so that's thanks to the two switches that I installed on the doors. And also the switch in the center console, can turn them on when the doors are closed, and that's it, everything works well. I also found 4 out of the 5 original screws that hold the dash in place, so I replaced those, and I still have to find one more to put it under the glove box. For now I left it without the screw there. And speaking of the glove box, I also installed the door for the glove box, using the very little screws to hold the hinges in place and the actual door. Installing the lock is not that hard, but as far as I know, all TR6s have this problem. When the glove box is closed, it's really hard to open it. It's, because you have to press the button, and in the meantime you have to pull the cover out, and it doesn't really work. You just rely on the spring, which is on the switch for the light, but by pressing the button in, you're pressing also on the spring in, and it's really tricky, but it is what it is. It is just badly designed. Huh? What are you gonna say? Nice. So these are, I wired them on a separate switch, which is on the green circuit. The green circuit is the one that is powered only with the ignition on. So, and this is where I put the switch. It's nice and easy to access, and it's hidden in the meantime, so it's not on the way of your knee or anything, so I think that's fine. This I have to secure still up there, and here I have some more wires. These are for the seatbelt switches. One of them has to go to the door for the buzzer and stuff like that, but you know what, I'm not gonna hook those up. but I'm just gonna hide them somewhere. And this is the relay for these lights, so I'm gonna secure it somewhere here now. And this wire I have to hide a little bit. And yeah, but more or less we are done here with the electrical. And then it was the end of the day and I decided to go for a ride, which wasn't really only for fun, because I wanted to test the rear suspension. Ralph Cap keeps telling me in the comments that the suspension is way too high, and yes, Ralph, you're right, we're gonna have to address that, but we'll see when and how. So I just went to test it and I came back, and that was the end of this day. But I think I'm gonna keep going with my video here because we are only at about 11 minutes here. Yeah, we are doing pretty good today, huh? We're going really fast. The next day was evaporative system day. I started by designing a little bracket for the carbon canister because we were missing ours, and then I made it and I painted it. And while the paint was drying, I went to test fit the canister and the anti-run-on valve, and I know that usually they sit one on top of the other, but for me it doesn't make so much sense, so I decided to put them one next to the other. For the emissions and vacuum lines, I checked some drawings and manuals and stuff, but the best thing was that Chef Tash let me take a video of his system when I was with him on the weekend, and that video helped me a lot. That video is on my iPad, so I can't use it here unless I jump through some hoops and do miracles to convert it. Anyways, I'm gonna take you through the steps here one by one, so hopefully it's gonna be clear for everybody what goes where. I started test assembling here all the little hoses and fittings that I bought from Moss Motors for the evaporative system. All the fittings and all the hoses are new, and when I knew that everything was fitting well, I went on the vise and I assembled them permanently. So you can see how this goes. This is the 7/16 hose. It goes to the two carbs and to the valve cover, and then the other end goes in the center of the carbon canister, but the canister is still not here, so we're gonna hook that up later. One of the reasons to decide to put the canister and the anti-run-on valve one next to the other was because I was missing the C-shaped hose that has to connect them if they go one on top of the other. So I just used a piece of 5/8 heater hose that we have left over from our limousine builds, and I connected them together. That wasn't the only reason, but that actually helped me take the decision. When the paint on the bracket was dry, I installed it on the fender, and I know all the purists now are hating me probably because that's not the original spot for this canister. I don't even know where the original spot is. I just found this convenient spot for myself and I mounted it there. Couldn't find the original holes, maybe there aren't any, I don't know. I just drilled my own holes and ran some 1/2-inch metal screws in them. For the valve I used a rubber coated clamp, which you can't really see here, but it is a tight spot. And then I connected the wires. These are brown with red and white with brown, I think, the one that brings ground from the oil pressure sensor. I'm not sure if this is a 1/4 inch or 5/16 line that connects the rear vacuum ports of the carbs to the canister, one of the two little ports on top of the canister. And again here we have to use a T fitting, so we have the two lines coming from the two carbs going together into one and then going on top of the canister. The other little port on top of the canister needs to be connected to the breather of the gas tank, the one that I just let loose at the back under the gas tank. Now I realize that actually this needs to be hooked up to this canister. So this line goes down to somewhere under the rod, and from there must be a steel line going all the way under the car to the gas tank. But we will see later what we're gonna do here. Another vacuum line is going from the port on the intake manifold to the little port of the anti-run-on valve, but that's pretty straightforward. Just a 1/4-inch line, I think, and hooks them up together. And the last line that we have to hook up is this one, the one that we said has to go to the breather of the gas tank, going down, then going across, and then going all the way to the gas tank. And I know I said I have to use steel line for that, but how about this? I have all these lines here hanging in my GT6 and I'm not planning to use them. So I think I have more than enough to run a line from the radiator all the way to the gas tank. Let's do it. Okay, you're right. It's too close to the exhaust here. I know. So you're right. From here to the end over there, we're gonna run a steel pipe. For the rest of the way, I think we can get away with the flex line. Okay, I don't know if you can see anything. I'll try to show you. So this is the EVAP line. That's the line that's coming from the gas tank. The one that it was just a breather according to me, but actually this is the EVAP line. So it's coming this way along with the gas line, and they go together that way, close to the exhaust. And from there, I don't know if it is in focus or not, but here you can see where it turns into a flex line and keeps going that way, and then here goes together with the brake line and along this cross member, and then over there it turns into, that's already the line from the canister. I think we did well. And the whole engine is oily, and the frame is oily here, but that's from that line that exploded, so we're gonna have to clean it later, but probably we're gonna put it on the hose. So now that everything is hooked up, I could test the system, and the first thing to do was to see if the valve was open or closed. I touched with my finger underneath, and there you could feel the actual valve, and surprisingly it was open. So I disconnected the wires and tried to see if the solenoid was gonna click or not, and it wasn't clicking, so definitely something was wrong here. So while the engine was running, with my test light I tested both wires to see if there was power and ground there, and there was only ground, there was no power. So that's the brown and red wire. It is supposed to be always live with the ignition on, even when the engine is not running, but there was no power. So I checked the schematic to see what was powering the brown and red wire, and it turns out it's coming from the ignition switch. And on the ignition switch I found the other end of the black and red wire, and it had power when the ignition was off. That's weird. So I started the engine and checked the wire again, and there was no power. There was no power on the wire when the engine was running. and it was supposed to be exactly the opposite. I looked carefully and I found this black with green wire, which you could tell that it had a different connector on it. Somebody put it aftermarket, and it was connected to a terminal which had power when the ignition was on. And the other end of this black and green wire is hanging, you can see it right there at the back, and does nothing. So I just moved the brown with red wire to this connector, disconnected the black and green, and now we have power when the ignition is running. And as expected, now we had power on this wire when the engine was running. And we also have ground on the white with brown wire, and just to make sure that everything was okay, I went to turn off the engine to see if the ground was gonna disappear when the oil pressure drops. And indeed, so the wiring works well. So now let's connect it to the valve and see if the valve actually runs well. And yes, now I could hear the solenoid, even I saw the wire arcing, and when I put my finger underneath, the valve was closed. And before we wrap it up for today, let's do one more test. Let's try and hear the solenoid clicking when we turn the engine off. Yes, I heard it. Did you? No? You gotta check your ears. Okay, I'll bring you closer. If you didn't hear that, you really gotta check your ears. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Bye.